Today's topic is all about how you get into the gaming industry. And a few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of interviewing Ben Skutt and Dr. Darryl Higga. Ben is a concept artist and the 2D art manager for Heroes of Newerth. He's worked as a 2D and 3D artist for motion comics, mobile apps, animation, TV commercials, and interactive trade show experiences. He's also the founder of the Full Sail online digital arts community. Darryl is a gaming producer for wargaming.net. He has worked on games for PC and consoles, including World of Tanks, Ebony, Age 2, World Championship Poker 1 and 2, Sunnytown, Tynan, and more. He has a PhD in international relations with an emphasis on international security and international political economy from the USC School of International Relations. He's a big fan of online and strategy games, as well as pop culture and Japanese animation. I sat down with them to discuss how they broke into the gaming industry and what advice they have for others. Here's our conversation. Welcome. I'm so happy to have you.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
We were just on a panel together called A Career in Video Games. Is it all it's cracked up to be? To give us an idea of what we talked about, what inspired you guys to get involved in gaming? How did you know that gaming was the right career for you? Because there are a lot of people out there that ask me at convention after convention, no matter what city I'm in, I'm a gamer, I'm interested in working in video games. What is that next step? Or how do I know that a gaming career is for me? So what about you guys? Darryl, do you want to start?
Sure. My path to the video game career was a little bit different than I think typically, because I know now that there are ways so you can kind of go to school and learn all the basics so that you're ready for that job. When I was doing it, I was actually a college professor, and what you discover is that they don't make a lot of money, and I was actually, as a part-time job, I was actually working as a quality assurance tester at a game publisher. And what I discovered was, I was presenting all my research and everything else. I absolutely loved doing the game side of things. I loved trying to figure out, what are issues with the games? How can we improve the games? What does it take to make the product for the player and, make it an enjoyable thing? That's sort of what motivated me to kind of change gears and switch careers.
I heard that on the panel, that the panelists love the whole entertainment process, not just playing games, which is the process of creating. Ben, I see you nodding. What do you think?
No, absolutely. A big part of creating video games, and one of the things that multiple members of the panels mentioned, especially you, is that making a video game is a completely different process than playing a video game, and it's a completely different passion, a completely different love. I know for me, years ago, back in the early 90s, when I was a youth, video games used to come with things called manuals, which they don't seem to come with anymore.
Right.
And inside of
That's
them,
true.
inside of them, they used to have just the most beautiful artwork. They would be 30, 50 pages sometimes of just beautiful pencil drawings and paintings. And when I was young, I used to sit down and I used to copy the drawings out of there and make my new characters out of those books. And that was where my first love for creating for video games came from. And I used to think, wow, wouldn't it be great to be one of the people that does these little drawings? And now it's changed quite a bit. There aren't many pencil drawings that you see inside of books anymore. But since then, I've gone to school, and I am one of the people that has gone to a school program to learn this career and learn this vocation. It's been great. I am literally getting to live my childhood dream.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what advice you would give for pursuing a video game career? I know that a lot of the panelists agreed that you should know your passion, know your niche. If it's design, if it's writing, if it's technical, if it's programming, QA. I know you have some 3 nuggets or so that you mentioned on the panel of best advice for pursuing a career.
Yeah, sure. Of course, obviously, you need to be able to build the skills that you need to do the job. So absolutely work very hard at building those skills. But 3 things that I think are really important is that you should always be content but never satisfied. Basically, you should be at peace and you should be happy with wherever you're at in your life, wherever you're at in your career. But you can't be satisfied with the quality of the work that you're doing to the point where you don't learn, where you don't grow. So always be looking to move to that next level, but always be happy with where you're at, because you don't want to constrict yourself so much, get so frustrated and depressed with where you're at that you don't even want to work harder. Second, I think you should always try to practice what I call humble pride.
I love that.
The idea is that you should always be proud of the work that you do, and you should always produce work that you're proud of, but also understand that you're not the best person in the world. You have room to improve, and that you can step back from your work. You can take feedback from others while being very proud of what you do, but also being able to improve on top of that based on what people say. And then finally, I think it's always important to be the person that takes responsibility but shares the glory. Video games are an incredibly collaborative process. And if you can be the kind of person that when a problem comes up, you're willing to stand up and be like, you know what, it's my fault, I take responsibility for it, and I'm going to fix it, you're going to be looked at as a person in that company that can solve problems and that people can rely on and depend on. And in the same way, you don't want to be the person when success comes that takes all that glory for yourself, because you're not the only person that was there in that room that created that product. If you can share that glory with the team, they also show that you value that team. So always be the person that's the first to step up and take blame and fix a problem. But when things go well, be the first person to congratulate your teammates because everybody worked hard to create the product.
I love that. I mean, developers are humans. Like, they're all working together. They're gamers themselves. They have a passion for a project, and that collaboration, I think, is so special. So I really like that a lot. Darryl.
Yeah, I would say, and this is a recurring theme, but I want to emphasize this because I don't want to sugarcoat it, and I think if people have a realistic view of what to expect when they go into the game industry, that'll prepare them much better for being interviewed, to be frank, and just to be very practical about it.
Yeah.
And basically what I see is that to separate out the passion for playing games with the passion for making games and understand that distinction. I think the other thing too is that assume that, okay, let's say you get past the initial step, you've applied for a job position, you're getting an interview. Keep in mind that, this whole process, I mean, it's a company like any other place, and the whole goal is to make sure that you find the right people to complete the project.
Sure.
So this is less about finding sort of, these hotshot aces and more about finding people who can fit into a team, integrate their skills. Like if you're being interviewed, we assume you already have the skills required. And that's not enough. I mean, you have to understand that that's just step one. Step two is, can you work with a team? I mean, you have to understand that, if you come in there just thinking somehow that you are singularly going to solve all these problems or that you are going to be the single source of inspiration, you're actually probably going to be a liability for the team, and they're going to sense that. And that's something very important for people to realize, is that, good, be confident about your work, but don't be overconfident. I think what you said is exactly what people need to keep in mind, and that, this is a collaborative process. Granted, there are games that are made by one person, 2 people, 5 people. They're great games. If you're going to work in what we would say is like where a bulk of the people work, you're talking about project teams of 30, 40, 50, 100, 150, even more than that working worldwide on a project. And you're going to have to be able to fit in with all these other people and understand that all of them have a great vision. You're not the only one. All of them have great skills to bring to the table. The reason why this game is going to be successful is because all those people are sharing that vision. It takes everybody to make a good game and one person to derail and make a bad game. So,
it's a lot of collaboration.
Yeah, it's a lot of collaboration. And nowadays, all of these game projects, these are worldwide projects. It's not just dealing with people who, work in the cubicle next to you, but you're talking about dealing with people from all over the world, very different cultures, very different languages, and you kind of have to fit into that.
Absolutely.
You can't expect the world to come to you. You're going to be a part of this world.
Absolutely. We're here in Chicago doing this panel, and I remember doing it in Sacramento with a developer who said he made assets for Activision. And he said, I and these other developers, we would churn these out, and we would work a lot of solitary hours. And I know as writers, fellow writers out there, there's a lot of solitary confinement hours where you are churning away at your keyboard and you're writing. And so there is that element of working in games that it is very lonely aspect. But then it's also such a unique industry because, like you said, then you have to get into a room and become this collaborative unit where you talk about the assets and what needs to change or what needs to be with editing, with the writing process. I know I've worked with several editors that I loved it. I loved the light bulb process that an editor can say one thing about your writing and, you're like, oh, that would work perfectly. And then it snowballs into this collaboration unit. Because, when you're in it 24/7, you only see that one angle. And so, me personally, I love it. You're nodding.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think that's the one thing to realize, that in a collaboration, you get these epiphanies.
Yeah.
That you would never have had if you're working on it by yourself. That's not to say, because I know some people who've made some brilliant games, 1-person or 2-person teams. So I don't want to distract from that.
Sure.
And I don't want to, say that that's not the right way to do it. I think for some products, that's the right way to do it. But let's say you're going to bring a game to the console, or you're going to have a high production value product. It's not one person's vision. It's a lot of people working together.
For sure.
And you never know where a good idea is going to come from. And a good idea can come from anywhere. Yeah. A good art idea could come from a programmer, or a good design idea could come from a QA member. It doesn't really matter. One of my favorite stories is back when Walt Disney was creating Mickey Mouse, he really wanted to call it Mortimer. But his wife said, that's a really dumb idea. You should call him Mickey. That's a much better name. And to Walt's credit, he listened to his wife and said, you know what, you're right. I'm going to call it Mickey. Now, obviously, she wasn't the one that created Walt Disney and the world that he created.
Sure.
But he was smart enough to know that a good idea can come from anywhere, and he's not the end-all, be-all of what the best ideas are.
Absolutely. That's awesome. What about game jams and beta testings? And for someone that really wants to get their foot in the door, but they haven't perfected, their portfolio perhaps, or they aren't able to go to a convention and meet developers. Are there things they can do locally, like game jams, or ask for beta testings that might help them get the foot in the door? Darryl?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to say, no matter what discipline you're in, if you're working on games, that becomes your portfolio. So artists have to have an art portfolio. There's no doubt about that. But everyone in the game industry should at least be working on some ideas. Like, if you don't have any ideas, then the question is, well, that's great. Are you a project manager? Because aside from that, honestly, you should be bringing ideas to the table. 99.9% of your ideas will never make it into the final game. But that's okay. That's part of the beauty of the process. That's why you're working with 20, 30, 50, 100, 200 people. It's because everybody, that one idea that kind of just sticks in there. And it's your idea. And, when the final product comes out, you own that one piece. And that's awesome. But when you're working by yourself, or if you're trying to get into the industry, one thing you have to understand is, it's about the process of making games. I don't want to hear about your high score. I don't want to hear about what level you are in your MMORPG.
Sure.
I want to know, what did you do? Like, I wrote a story, or I wrote a scenario for this universe that, that exists in an existing game, but I did this because I thought, well, what would happen next?
Absolutely.
What would be the next update? Or if you're a designer, it's like, I scripted this totally new level for this first-person shooter. And that represents my skills here. Or if you're a producer, can you get a bunch of people at a game jam to work together?
Absolutely.
Which is a very hard thing to do. It's not as easy as it sounds. To try, even if everyone is passionate about the final product, that doesn't necessarily mean they agree. I mean, passion is not agreement. In fact, a lot of times passion is conflict. So you have to manage that. That's part of the creative fury that creates, great entertainment. It's not, we all see that vision and it's all very obvious. No, It's actually, you throw everything into a pot and there's a big fist fight. And what comes out of that is kind of what, ends up being a game.
Right. That makes sense.
I like what you said about 99% of your ideas not making it in. I actually had a great art teacher in high school who used to have us do figure drawings in our class. And at the end of the class, he'd take around the trash can and we'd throw every figure drawing that we did that day away.
Wow.
Wow.
And it was an amazing lesson, because you can't get so attached to your work that every single thing that you do becomes that gem. You need to be your own best editor in a way. You need to be able to peel away all the work that you do so that you can find those gems. And in fact, one of the things that I look for when I look for a portfolio is I look for the pieces that don't fit, that don't belong. Because that starts to kind of explain the person's thought process. And it makes me start to wonder, well, what is this person's judgment level that they might put in a piece that's so not to the level of quality of the rest of the pieces that they would say this is equivalent to it? Am I going to have issues with this person producing work that's going to be inconsistent? So that's really important. I also would say that at least for people that are working towards a game career, is that all the things that you do in a game career you can be doing today. If you want to be an artist, you can be creating art today. If you want to be a designer, you can be designing games today. And you don't even need to know how to program. You can get out index cards and make a trading card game just by writing on cards. That's how Magic was made. Was they literally wrote it down on index cards, and they played it with a group of people.
And trial and error.
Trial and error.
What
They
works,
figured
what
it out.
doesn't.
Yeah, and that's your way to get started. Is just by experiencing stuff that way. There's plenty of people that you can meet online. At least in the art community, it's a very open community. And I was able to just connect with people before I even finished school that have been able to help me immensely in my career just by making friends. And that's really, the best thing to say about networking is just view it like making friends. You're not looking to try to get anything out of anybody. You're just looking to make a friend. And if the worst case scenario is you met a person that has a shared interest that you have, that's not really that bad of a scenario to be in. In fact, it's a pretty awesome scenario.
We also mentioned how being on LinkedIn and having a web presence, having something where the hiring managers can go and see exactly where you are, what you've done. Like you said, a portfolio doesn't have to mean art, just who you are, how they can contact you. What about software? If we could just talk real quick about what's hot right now with Maya, Photoshop. Can you name some of the software that maybe, artists and programmers are using? Ben, if you want to go first.
Sure. Pretty much all my painting hits Photoshop at some point, and most of the artists that I work with also use Photoshop. I do hop into Clip Studio Paint or Manga Studio from time to time. They've got a really nice brush system. I've known plenty of artists that use Painter for 2D art. But if you want a free solution, GIMP is absolutely a solution that you could go for. There's also new programs like Mischief, and Autodesk has Autodesk Sketchbook Pro, which is also an excellent software. My degree, I learned a lot of 3D programs. Of course, there's Maya, 3D Studio Max, and there's a lot of other programs. But the best advice is to kind of study, for 3D modeling at least, you should study agnostic 3D modeling, where you learn and you understand 3D modeling outside of what type of package that you use. And that's the same for art. Photoshop and Painter, really the differences between them are very surface. And the skills that you need to have transfer between all applications, just like the work of drawing with pencil on paper transfers to digital when you grab a tablet. So learn your skills outside of those softwares, and then it only helps to have a good understanding of the software. It's more of a means to the end, and it
because Darryl did say you have to be ready to switch, because the one company
don't get caught up in this religious war of Max versus Maya, because that's just going to lead
no
you
religious wars. Max versus
definitely,
Maya.
definitely not.
And beyond.
But obviously, people are more comfortable with one package or another, and that will tend to determine the pipeline for a different company. But you may not be the one setting the pipeline. So, I think that understanding 3D, modeling sort of as an abstract is the critical thing. Ultimately, the tool that you use to get it is like, oh, am I using a red sable horse hair brush, or am I using a synthetic brush? Well,
Sure.
For some people, that distinction will matter. For the end product, probably not so much.
And then for producing Jira, you mentioned, I think, Excel, Shotgun.
Yeah, any way to stay organized.
Gotcha.
And, some people will be advocate for project. It's like that. That's great when you're building like missile systems and things like that. But for games, sometimes you have to be a lot more flexible. You'll find that a lot of studios have gone to an agile methodology, or there's some hybrid of waterfall and agile, just because you have deadlines and you have milestones. So it's kind of, you can't always be in an iterative loop, but you should understand the process of coding. Even if you're not a coder, you need to understand how that whole thing works and have sort of a sensitivity to the technical side of making a game. And like, for instance, we're talking about things that you can do locally in game jams and things like that. Finish a product. See it through from beginning to end, and you will discover that there are disciplines that you just didn't expect. And,
Right.
and what tools you need to get there will fall from that. Yeah. And if you have Excel available, use Excel. If you have, sometimes you can use, Visio, whatever. There's lots of software packages that are the ends to the means, but understand what you're trying to get to first.
Right. And even the panelists mentioned earlier in our panel that you can, video editors are needed in the video game industry, and you can cut up a favorite scene of your movie, edit it the way would make a twist or a new angle. Also, avenues that people don't realize are out there. You need PR, HR, you need events coordinators, you need, there's so much in the video game industry that's not just design or production or art or writing.
Yep, community managers.
And I'm going to say something, because this is something that we're working with. I don't want to say this is the easiest path, but user-generated content is a big deal. So people who stream, who put together game guides, who edit together, videos of their favorite games set to music, all these other things. I know it's easy to say, well, geez, the producers never look at that. Well, some companies do, and some companies analyze it quite a bit. And, I'll be honest, we engage with a lot of those people because they represent our community. And maybe you just want to stay on the community side, that's fine. Yeah. But that is also a way to show, that you understand a mastery of how to present this kind of information.
That's what happened with Machinima, the creator of Machinima.
Sure.
He did that user-generated content and then was picked up to be a full-time Machinima developer. So I love that example, Darryl and Ben. Thank you guys so much. How can people follow you, and what are you working on next? Darryl?
So, just go ahead and look for Wargaming, Chicago, Baltimore. That's a specific studio I work for.
Ooh, local in Chicago, bringing you from Chicago Comic-Con.
Right. And then the product I'm working on is World of Tanks for the Xbox 360, and we just released the Xbox One version.
Yes.
So go ahead and download it. It's free to play, so no financial obligation.
No barriers.
Yeah,
right
just
now,
go
to
ahead and
Xbox One, download World of Tanks. Ben?
Yeah, so I work on Heroes of New Earth, and you can find us at heroesofnewearth.com. Also free to play, so you can download the game, give it a try, enjoy it. We've also got a great new hero coming out pretty soon. Can't say exactly when. I don't think we've announced exactly when it's coming out, but it is a character that I got to work on, and I'm actually pretty proud of how it turned out. Yay! So I think you guys will enjoy it. Thank you. Then you can also see my portfolio. It's incredibly out of date at benskutt.com. Yeah, you can find me on social media anywhere that has a Ben Skutt.
You know, I've had the chance to be on panels with both Ben and Darryl, and I really love the advice they gave people on this topic. It's one of the reasons I just had to have them on the show, and I'd like to thank them both for a great interview.